Commander Zextal stood at the viewport of the Galactic Defense Academy's observation deck, his 4 eyes fixed on the approaching shuttle. The vessel seemed absurdly small against the backdrop of the Academy's massive crystalline spires, much like its occupant would soon appear among the Academy's diverse array of alien species. "This must be some sort of diplomatic gesture," muttered Subcommander Krell, his metallic scales shifting with disapproval. "Humans barely achieved interstellar travel 2 decades ago. What could they possibly teach at the galaxy's premier military academy?" Zextal's outer membrane rippled with amusement. In his 3 centuries of commanding the academy, he'd learned that assumptions often led to the most valuable lessons. "The Council believes they have something unique to offer. Let's reserve judgment until we see for ourselves." The shuttle docked with characteristic human precision, no flashy maneuvers, no waste of energy. Lieutenant Maya Patel emerged from the airlock with the same efficiency. She stood barely taller than a juvenile Zentran, her dark skin and black hair unremarkable by human standards. But there was something in her bearing that gave Zextal pause. "Lieutenant Patel," he greeted, extending his primary appendage in the human fashion. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy." "Commander." Her grip was firm but careful, mindful of his species' sensitive pressure points. "Thank you for this opportunity. I understand I'm the first human instructor here." "The first of any newly discovered species to be granted such a position," Krell interjected, his tone carrying the slightest edge of challenge. Maya's expression remained neutral, but her eyes, those strangely focused human eyes, showed a flash of something Zextal would later recognize as anticipation. "Then we'll have many preconceptions to address, won't we?" The tour of the Academy revealed the first hints of humanity's unique attributes. While other new instructors marveled at the quantum computing arrays or the plasma training chambers, Maya asked questions about ventilation systems, gravity controls, and emergency protocols. She paid particular attention to the environmental seals between sections. "Preparing for worst-case scenarios?" Zextal inquired. "Always," she replied. "Humans learned early that survival often depends on understanding systems you hope never to need." The real surprise came during the standard medical evaluation. Dr. Ninetau, the Academy's chief xenobiologist, stared at the readings with all 3 of his eye stalks fully extended. "This can't be correct," he muttered. "Your cellular structure shows signs of constant damage and repair. Your bones have multiple healed fractures. Your skin bears evidence of repeated regeneration. How are you still functioning?" Maya smiled. "That's just being human. We adapt through stress, heal through damage. Every scar is a lesson learned." The first training session silenced the remaining skeptics. Maya stood before a class of advanced combat students, species representing the galaxy's apex predators and warriors. A young drachnid, nearly 3 times her mass, stepped forward. "What could you possibly teach us about combat, human?" he rumbled, scales bristling with electromagnetic challenge signals. Maya's response was to invite him to attack. The drachnid's strike was blindingly fast, backed by enough force to punch through standard battle armor. Maya wasn't there. She had shifted, not quickly, but efficiently, just enough to let the blow pass. "Again," she said calmly. "But this time, watch what I'm doing, not where I am." For the next 10 minutes, she turned the training room into a lesson in human combat philosophy. The drachnid never landed a solid hit, while Maya systematically demonstrated how his own strength could be used against him. When he finally yielded, breathing heavily, she addressed the class. "Humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species in the galaxy. We can't regenerate limbs like the Axolotl, we can't generate energy fields like the Mantari, and we certainly can't match raw power with a drachnid. But we've spent our entire evolutionary history learning to survive against creatures that could tear us apart. We turned our weaknesses into strengths." She gestured to the drachnid student, who was now watching her with newfound respect. "Your natural weapons are impressive, but they make you dependent on certain attack patterns. Your strength is amazing, but it costs energy to use. Every advantage has a cost, every strength creates a potential weakness. Humans specialize in finding those weaknesses, not because we're superior, but because we had to. That evening, reviewing the training footage in his office, Zextal noticed something remarkable. The human's movements had been precise, planned, but there was more. Play back section 47B, he instructed the computer. Focus on her respiratory and thermal patterns. The analysis confirmed his suspicion. Throughout the entire demonstration, Maya's vital signs had remained steady. She hadn't been fighting at her limit. She had been teaching. Fascinating, Dr. Ninetal commented from the doorway. I've been analyzing her medical data. Humans don't just adapt to survive trauma, they get stronger from it. Their muscles tear and rebuild denser, their bones break and heal stronger, even their nervous system rewires itself to handle greater stress. Zextal's membrane shifted to a deeper shade of thought. You're saying we haven't seen her real capabilities? I'm saying, Commander, that we may need to reevaluate our understanding of what makes a species formidable. The Council was right, humans have much to teach us, starting with the fact that appearances can be deceiving. As the Academy's triple moons rose over the horizon, casting their pale light through the crystalline spires, Zextal watched Maya in the empty training room, methodically working through a series of exercises. Each movement was deliberate, efficient, refined by countless repetitions. He realized that the real lessons were just beginning. Word spread quickly through the Galactic Defense Academy about the human instructor's unorthodox methods. Within a cycle, Lieutenant Maya Patel's combat psychology course had become both the most requested and most controversial addition to the curriculum. She's dismantling centuries of combat doctrine, Subcommander Krell protested during the faculty council. His metallic scales had dulled with stress over the past weeks. Teaching elite warriors to retreat? To conserve energy? This isn't the way of true combat. Commander Zextal observed the holograms floating above the council table, training footage showing students of various species learning to fight with less force, more efficiency. And yet, the performance metrics speak for themselves. Overall combat effectiveness has increased by 30%. But not everyone was convinced. Among the student body, a movement was growing, led by Senior Cadet Vexthor of the Kronax species. The Kronax were living weapons, bioengineered centuries ago for battlefield supremacy, and they took immense pride in their martial heritage. Vexthor made his move during an advanced combat demonstration. Maya had been showing a class how to counter superior strength when the massive Kronax stepped into the training circle uninvited. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline armor plates shifting with barely contained aggression, he radiated challenge. This mockery has gone on long enough, he announced, his voice resonating through the chamber. You teach weakness, disguised as strategy. Today, we prove that true combat power cannot be countered by your tricks. The training room fell silent. Even the most aggressive species recognized the dangerous edge in Vexthor's stance. This wasn't a challenge, it was an attempt to humiliate. Maya's response surprised everyone. She laughed. Interesting timing, Cadet, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite its softness. I was just about to discuss the biggest mistake warriors make in combat. Would you like to help demonstrate? Vexthor's armor plates flared, a sign of both anger and confusion. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. You dare mock? Not mocking, Maya interrupted, stepping into the circle. Teaching. The biggest mistake isn't overconfidence, though that's up there. It's assuming you understand the situation. She turned to address the class. Watch carefully. This is what happens when someone thinks they know all the variables. What followed would be archived in the Academy's training records as the lesson. Vexthor attacked with the full fury of his species, a combination of bioengineered strength, crystalline armor, and generations of combat programming. His first strike could have shattered reinforced battle plate. Maya moved like water around stone. Each of Vexthor's attacks met empty air, each burst of speed found only afterimages. But she wasn't just dodging, she was positioning, always staying just within his reach, inviting the next attack. "You're wondering why you can't land a hit," she called out, her breathing still steady. "You have superior reach, superior strength, superior speed. By every metric you value, you should be winning. That's the trap." Vexthor's attacks became more frenzied. His crystalline armor began to pulse with stored energy, a sign that he was approaching his species' berserker state. Several instructors moved to intervene, but Commander Zextal held them back. He had finally understood what Maya was demonstrating. "You're burning energy," she continued, her movements becoming even more minimal. "Each attack costs you more than it costs me. Your armor is heating up, affecting your joint mobility. Your engineered muscles are working harder than they need to. All because you're fighting the battle you want, rather than the battle that is." The change was becoming visible now. Vexthor's movements were slowing, his perfect form deteriorating. Sweat-like condensation formed on his armor plates, a critical sign of system strain in his species. The greatest warriors in human history, Maya lectured, still moving just out of reach, weren't the strongest or the most skilled. They were the ones who understood that combat isn't about domination, it's about solving problems. Every opponent is a puzzle, every battle an equation. The variable that matters isn't strength. She finally moved inside Vexthor's guard, her hand striking 3 precise points on his armor in rapid succession. The mighty Kronax froze, his systems temporarily locked in feedback loop. Its efficiency. The training room erupted in a chaos of chittering, whistling, and electromagnetic pulses, the varied sounds of amazed alien species. Vexthor stood immobile, his armor plates cycling through confused patterns. What did you do to me?" he managed through locked jaw servos. "Showed you what you refused to see," Maya replied, already moving to release the pressure points. "Your armor's neural feedback systems are magnificent engineering, but they're designed to amplify strength and speed. They don't handle contradictory input well. A light touch in the right place does more than a hammer blow to the wrong one." As feeling returned to his limbs, Vexthor did something unprecedented in Kronax history. He laughed. The sound was like crystal chimes in an earthquake. "I understand now," he said, looking at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. "We engineered ourselves to be the perfect weapons. And forgot that weapons are only as effective as the strategy behind them," Maya completed. "Ready to learn something new?" The tension in the room transformed into excitement as Vexthor formally requested permission to enroll in Maya's advanced classes. But not everyone shared the enthusiasm. In the back of the training room, Sub-Commander Krell watched with growing concern. Change was coming to the Academy, faster than some were prepared to accept. And in the depths of space, something was stirring, a threat that would put all of Maya's lessons, and humanity's approach to warfare, to the ultimate test. 3 cycles after the demonstration with Vexthor, the Galactic Defense Academy underwent a transformation that no one had anticipated. Lieutenant Maya Patel's training methods had spread beyond combat classes into every aspect of Academy life. Even the maintenance crews had begun adopting human problem-solving approaches. Commander Zextal found Maya in the Academy's Environmental Control Center, surrounded by students from a dozen different species. She was teaching them about something she called systems thinking. Every spacecraft, every station, every piece of technology is connected, she explained, gesturing to the holographic display of the Academy's infrastructure. But more importantly, every connection is a potential solution waiting to be discovered. The students watched in fascination as she demonstrated how a malfunction in the waste recycling system could be turned into an emergency power source, or how the artificial gravity grid could become a weapon in the right circumstances. "Humans call it MacGyvering," she continued, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Named after a legendary problem solver who could save the day with nothing but spare parts and creativity. But these aren't combat techniques, protested a young Valaxian, their crystalline form shimmering with confusion. Everything is a combat technique if you understand it well enough, Maya replied. Humans survived on Earth by turning everything at hand into an advantage. We didn't have natural weapons, so we learned to turn our environment into one. Dr. Ninetal entered the room, his eye stalks twitching with excitement. Lieutenant, we've completed the analysis of your latest training session. The results are unprecedented. He projected a new set of data into the air. Your students aren't just learning techniques, their brains are actually forming new neural pathways. They're beginning to think like humans. Maya nodded, unsurprised. That's what humans do best. We adapt, and we help others adapt. We're not just teaching them to fight differently, we're teaching them to see differently. But the most remarkable changes were happening in the combat training rooms. Under Maya's guidance, species that had traditionally relied on pure strength were learning the art of efficiency. Creatures that had evolved natural weapons were discovering the power of misdirection. Vex Thor, once her greatest skeptic, had become her most dedicated student. The massive Kronax warrior had modified his crystalline armor to require less energy, sacrificing raw power for sustainability. In my culture, he explained to a group of fascinated first-year cadets, we believed that overwhelming force was the answer to every challenge. The human way teaches us that force is just one tool among many. Yet not everyone embraced these changes. Subcommander Krell had been gathering supporters among the conservative faculty members. They watched with growing alarm as traditional combat doctrines were questioned and revised. This goes beyond combat training, Krell argued during a private meeting with Commander Zextal. She's changing the very foundation of how we prepare warriors. These methods, they're too unpredictable, too chaotic. Like humans themselves, Zextal observed, his outer membrane rippling with amusement. Have you noticed that our emergency response times have improved by 40%? Or that resource efficiency across the academy has increased by 60%? At what cost? Krell demanded. Our warriors are beginning to question orders, to improvise instead of following proven protocols. This isn't how the galaxy's defenders should behave. The argument was interrupted by a priority alert. Maya's voice came over the communication system, calm but urgent. Commander, you need to see this. Training Room 7, immediately. They found her standing before a holographic display of deep space sensor data. 3 days ago, we detected an anomaly in the outer rim defense grid, she explained without preamble. Most systems dismissed it as a sensor malfunction. But look at the pattern. The display showed tiny, seemingly random fluctuations in the grid's energy field. To most observers, it would appear as normal space noise. I don't see anything significant, Krell stated flatly. Exactly, Maya said. That's the point. It's too perfect. Natural interference has patterns, rhythms. This. She manipulated the display, overlaying multiple data streams, this is deliberate. Someone's testing our defenses, looking for blind spots. And they're doing it in a way specifically designed to exploit our standard detection protocols. Commander Zextal felt his primary heart skip a beat. You're saying. We're being hunted, Maya confirmed. And whoever it is, they know our systems well enough to hide in plain sight. They're using our own protocols against us, something humans have quite a bit of experience with. The implications were chilling. The galaxy's premier military academy, home to the most advanced defense technologies and training programs, was potentially compromised. But more disturbing was the realization that their traditional methods of detection and defense might be worse than useless, they could be exactly what the enemy was counting on. This, Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human warfare, is why we teach adaptability over strength, creativity over protocol. Because the greatest threat isn't always the one you can see coming, it's the one that turns your own strengths into weaknesses. As if to punctuate her words, the deep space sensors registered a new anomaly. This time, there was no subtlety, no attempt at concealment. Something massive was dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the Academy's system. The hunters had decided it was time to reveal themselves. The Galactic Defense Academy's alert sirens wailed across all frequencies as the unknown vessels emerged from hyperspace. Initial scans revealed 12 warships of unfamiliar design, their hulls covered in some kind of light-absorbing material that made them appear as voids against the stars. Multiple contacts, no known registry, the sensor officer reported, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with anxiety. They're not responding to any standard identification protocols. Commander Zextal turned to Maya, who was studying the tactical display with an unsettlingly familiar expression, the same focused calm she showed during training sessions. "Lieutenant, you predicted this. Any insights?" "They're arranged in a theta strike formation," she observed, "but it's too perfect, too textbook. They want us to think they're planning a standard assault." She pointed to subtle variations in their positioning. "This is psychological warfare. They're using our own tactical doctrine to make us react predictably." As if confirming her analysis, a transmission cut through all communication channels. The figure that appeared on the holoscreen was humanoid, but covered in seamless black armor that seemed to drink in light. When it spoke, its voice carried the artificial harmony of advanced translation software. "Greetings, esteemed Academy. We are the Void Concordat, and we've come to conduct an evaluation. Your facility claims to produce the finest warriors in the galaxy. We're here to test that claim." Subcommander Krell bristled, his scales emanating electromagnetic distress signals. "This is outrageous. The Academy doesn't need to prove." "Accept the challenge," Maya interrupted, her voice cutting through the chaos like a precision blade. All four of Zextal's eyes turned to her. "Explain." "They've been studying us, learning our protocols and procedures. They expect us to either reject the challenge and call for reinforcements, or accept and respond with standard defense formations." A small smile played across her face. "So let's do neither." Understanding dawned in Vexthor's crystalline features. "We show them what we've learned." Maya nodded. "Commander, request permission to coordinate our response. And I'm going to need access to all environmental and infrastructure controls." What followed would be recorded in Academy history as the Void Doctrine Incident. As the enemy fleet moved into attack position, Maya put her unorthodox training methods into action on a massive scale. First, she had the maintenance crews vent specific sections of the Academy's atmospheric processors, creating invisible currents of superheated gas in seemingly random patterns. Then, she ordered all non-essential power diverted to the Academy's gravitational field generators, not to reinforce them, but to create subtle fluctuations. "What are you doing?" Krell demanded as he watched her apparently weaken their defenses. "Creating chaos," she replied, her fingers dancing across the control interfaces. Humans learned early that the best way to deal with a superior force isn't to match its strength for strength, it's to change the rules of engagement entirely. When the Void Concordat launched their first attack wave, they found their carefully calculated targeting solutions disrupted by unexpected gravitational eddies. Their precision formations were scattered by invisible atmospheric currents that shouldn't have existed in space. But Maya wasn't done. She had the Academy's cadets deploy in seemingly random patterns, each group executing maneuvers that appeared uncoordinated and desperate. The enemy, programmed to recognize and counter standard tactics, found their targeting systems overwhelmed by the apparent chaos. "Now," Maya commanded, "show them what adaptive warfare really means." Vexthor led a squadron of Chronax warriors, their crystalline armor modified to absorb and redirect energy rather than simply withstanding it. They turned the enemy's weapons against them, using the principles Maya had taught them about efficiency over power. A team of Valaxian cadets, traditionally defensive specialists, executed impossible maneuvers by working in concert with the artificial gravity fluctuations, turning the very space around them into a weapon. They weren't just fighting in the environment, they were fighting with it. The maintenance crews, trained in Maya's systems thinking, repurposed waste energy from damaged systems into improvised weapons. Every failure became a resource, every setback an opportunity. The Void Concordat's perfect formation began to break down. Their attacks, based on countering standard military responses, found no purchase against an enemy that refused to behave according to any recognizable doctrine. Impossible, the Concordat commander transmitted, their artificial voice showing the first signs of stress. Our analysis was perfect. We studied every combat doctrine in the galaxy. That's the problem with perfect analysis, Maya replied over the command channel, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's long history of warfare. It only works when your opponent plays by the rules you understand. Humans learned long ago that the key to survival isn't having the best doctrine, it's being able to throw doctrine away when it doesn't serve you. As if to demonstrate her point, she ordered all Academy shields to drop for precisely 2.3 seconds. The enemy, trained to exploit such opportunities, rushed to capitalize on the apparent vulnerability. Instead, they flew directly into the path of the Academy's accumulated waste energy, transformed into a devastating impromptu weapon by the maintenance crew's repurposed systems. 3 Void Concordat ships disappeared in the ensuing chaos. 2 more suffered critical systems failures as Vex Thor's squad used their modified armor to create feedback loops in the enemy's energy weapons. The remaining ships, their perfect formation shattered, their tactical doctrine proved worse than useless, began to retreat. "Wait," Maya called out. "You came for an evaluation. Here's your result, the greatest warriors aren't the ones who perfect a single way of fighting. They're the ones who never stop learning new ways to win." As the last enemy ship vanished into hyperspace, the Academy fell silent. The only sound was the hum of systems returning to normal operation. Subcommander Krell stared at the tactical display, his scales shifting through colors of disbelief. "That wasn't combat," he whispered. "That was art." "No," Maya corrected, already moving to help organize repair teams. "That was humanity's greatest gift to warfare, the understanding that there's always another way. We just had to learn it the hard way first." 1 full cycle after the Void Concordat incident, the Galactic Defense Academy held its graduation ceremony beneath the light of its triple moons. The crystalline spires had been repaired, but they were different now, modified according to human principles to be more adaptable, more resilient. Like the Academy itself, they had evolved. Commander Zextal stood at the podium, his outer membrane shifting with pride as he addressed the assembled graduates and dignitaries from across the galaxy. "When this academic year began, we thought we knew what made a warrior great. We had centuries of doctrine, millennia of tactical evolution. We were, by our own assessment, the pinnacle of military education in the known galaxy." His primary eyes found Maya in the crowd, standing quietly among her fellow instructors. "We were wrong. Or rather, we were incomplete. It took a species younger than most of our tactical doctrines to show us what we had forgotten, or perhaps had never known." The commander gestured to the graduation class, where species that had once been rigid in their combat roles now stood transformed. "Look around you. See the Chronax warriors, whose legendary strength is now matched by their efficiency. Observe the Valaxian defenders, who learned that the best shield can also be a weapon. Watch our maintenance crews, who prove that every system, every failure, every challenge is an opportunity in disguise." Subcommander Krell, his scales now bearing the marks of battle from the Void Concordat attack, stepped forward. His transformation had perhaps been the most remarkable of all. "We used to think that combat was about power, about perfecting established techniques. Lieutenant Patel and her human perspective taught us that true combat mastery isn't about having the best doctrine, it's about having no doctrine at all." In the front row, Vex Thor sat with his graduating class, his crystalline armor modified in ways that would have been heretical to his people a cycle ago. The changes had already sparked a revolution in Kronak's military thinking. "We engineered ourselves for perfection," he rumbled, "but humans showed us that perfection is a cage. True strength lies in imperfection, in the ability to adapt and grow." Dr. Ninetau's research team had spent the cycle studying the neurological changes in students exposed to human training methods. "The results are fascinating," he reported to the assembled crowd, his eye stalks quivering with excitement. "We're seeing the development of entirely new neural pathways across all species. They're not just learning new techniques, they're learning new ways of learning." Maya finally rose to speak, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become legendary among the cadets. "Humans didn't become what we are because we were strongest, fastest, or most naturally gifted. We survived because we never stopped asking, what if? We looked at our weaknesses and asked how they could become strengths. We looked at our failures and asked what they could teach us." She walked to the center of the stage, where a holographic display showed the battle footage from the Void Concordat attack. This wasn't just a victory over an enemy. It was a victory over our own limitations. Every cadet here learned that the greatest weapon isn't a plasma cannon or a battle cruiser, it's the ability to see possibilities where others see only obstacles. The academy had changed in other ways too. The training rooms now featured variable gravity zones and unpredictable environmental conditions. Combat courses included sections on improvised weapons and system repurposing. Even the maintenance protocols had been rewritten to emphasize adaptability over efficiency. "But perhaps the most important lesson," Maya continued, "isn't about combat at all. It's about understanding that strength comes in many forms. The Void Concordat failed not because they were weak, but because they couldn't imagine anything beyond their perfect doctrine. They watched us, studied us, learned our standard protocols, but they couldn't comprehend a warrior culture built on embracing chaos rather than controlling it." Commander Zextal raised all four arms in a gesture of formal recognition. "In honor of these insights, and the transformation they have brought to our academy, the Council has approved the establishment of a new core principle in our curriculum. From this day forward, all cadets will study what we now call human adaptive warfare, not as a set of techniques to be mastered, but as a way of thinking to be embraced." The ceremony concluded with a demonstration that would have been impossible a cycle ago. Students from every species performed a combat drill that looked more like a dance, each warrior moving in perfect improvisation, turning weaknesses into strengths, limitations into advantages. They fought not as individuals trying to overcome their species' constraints, but as a unified force celebrating their differences. As the triple moons set on the ceremony, Maya stood at the same viewport where she had first arrived. Behind her, the sounds of celebration echoed through the academy's halls, a cacophony of different species united in their appreciation of adaptation and growth. "Was it what you expected?" Commander Zextal asked, joining her at the viewport. "When you first arrived?" Maya smiled, watching a new group of transport ships arriving with the next class of cadets. "Humans never really expect anything, Commander. We just hope, adapt, and keep pushing forward. That's what makes us who we are. And now it's what makes us all stronger," he replied, his membrane shifting to a deep shade of understanding. "Perhaps that's the greatest lesson humanity had to teach us, that true strength isn't about being unbeatable, but about never stopping to learn new ways to fight, to grow, to live." In the distance, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if reflecting the evolution of understanding that had taken place within the Academy's walls. The galaxy's premier military institution hadn't just survived its encounter with human teaching methods, it had been reborn through them, stronger not despite its changes, but because of them. And somewhere out there, Maya knew, the Void Concordat was probably studying this defeat, learning from it, adapting. She smiled at the thought. They were finally learning the most important lesson of all, that the only constant in warfare, as in life, is change itself.